All right, we're live. Excuse me. We are LIVE. This good Sunday afternoon. How's everyone doing? Thanks for joining us tonight. We would love it if you like, share, subscribe that we are live right now. And we're going to discuss episode 9. Episode 9 was called Black People, I Blame You. You, Black people. So if you have any questions or comments throughout this live, just drop them below. We're trying to watch the chat, and if we see your questions or if we see, anything you want to chime in on, we'll try to answer those questions. If not live, at least afterwards. Hello, Facebook. Who said that on Facebook? So I'm the host, Lisa Ty, along with my co-host,
Daoud Giazan.
Daoud Giazan. So our personality piece, let's just jump right into it. Our personality piece was regarding the protest, and I had posed the question whether or not it was being gentrified, because with my own eyes, I saw that majority of the protesters were white. All the news coverage was majority white or mixed crowds at these protests. So it was shocking to me when I went down to these to the protests here in Columbus, Ohio, that it was majority white, almost to the sense that they had everything under control. They had everything prepared. It was well organized, and I'm just used to us like, hey, let's go down, let's meet up downtown, let's protest, and it being less organized and a lot more black faces, I will say that, Columbus, Ohio is a college town. Ohio State is down the street from the State House, because every night when they leave the State House from protesting, they just walk straight down High Street to Ohio State. So majority of the protesters are Ohio State students. So I just thought it was gentrified. And almost a sense of, what are you doing here? We got this type of vibe. They took over, kind of. They took over. I know that you noticed throughout these past few weeks. So Daoud, what was your take on it? It was that you said that you didn't think it was gentrified.
No, not at all. Gentrified in itself means ownership. They didn't own the devastation of Black Death. They were there to support the ramifications of Black Death. They didn't own the ultimate talking points of that encounter and protest. We do, because we're living that life. The potential of gentrification can take place if they're able to take that energy and have it either fund or buttress or strengthen their interpretations of our reality. Now that at that point they can gentrify. But what we had going out there were people for various reasons, not just the issues of Black Death, but it was also the situation we've been in the past 3 months with being quarantined, with a lot of people not liking how that was going and how we arrived at that, all the way to people that were anti-vaxxers, all the way to people that were for civil liberties, knowing that the nation state is going to utilize the COVID scare, quote unquote, crisis, in order to justify monitoring people. Now, all those different movements that a lot of white people showed out for before the protests of Black Death, they were there out there earlier than that, but so many among us fell for the idea of white domination racist media, making them out to be just a bunch of kooks that wanted to just get their hair cut and blacks die as a result of COVID. That was a lie. These are people that are consistently protesting and have been consistently protesting Donald Trump ever since he's been in office. So those were a lot of those faces that were out there. Again, at the time, they didn't own anything out there. they were participating in a righteous action. In that sense, I applaud them. At the same time, if they should then take that energy and let it fund their particular projects and or fund or support their interpretations of our misery, well, that is at that point that becomes gentrified. And therefore, it is up to us to ensure that does not happen.
All right. Well, it just was a different atmosphere than I'm used to. You know, like I said, most of my protests have been with majority Black participants, and so I still feel that if gentrified is not the right word, then I still feel that they were the majority voices. They were the majority in the sense that they organized more protests. They organized more protests in different communities, suburbs. They organized protests in places that normally there's not a majority Black people. So, you know, they were the majority there. And most of the protesting was Black Lives Matter, right? It was really symbolic, and it wasn't anything tangible in a sense. I feel that if it was majority us, it would have been more tangibles being discussed. So that's why I meant by not necessarily gentrified, but it was definitely a majority white protesters. And on the positive side of that, we asked for it. That was the second part of
There you go.
The personality piece is we have been for the past, I don't know, since all of these hashtags come up, we ask white communities, people of color, where are you, when we're out here in these streets. And they showed up this time, and
I would like to say here, this also, I understand the uncomfortable feelings. I really do. But this is also, along with what you just mentioned, us getting what we asked for. A part of the ADOS movement, one of the things that caused that rift about 6 or 9 months ago was the foundational Blacks and those of the ADOS movement. And the clash came through criticism that we were just wanted to own so much of America, being proud of being American. Well, I don't mean to cause uncomfortable feelings, but if we're saying, which we do, that we're American citizens, how can we be surprised if fellow American citizens sees our disproportionate deaths and decide finally to stand with us as citizens, doing what citizens should do in a democratic republic? They should be out there, and because they are still the majority, they should be out there in numbers greater than ours. It should be no surprise if we are truly, honestly desiring to be and be seen as American citizens. It shouldn't be a shock.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why it is because what they've not been consistently involved in, even though through Black Lives Matter, which makes it easy for them to feel accepted, a lot of them have been participating for a long time. But the numbers that we saw recently were nothing more than the American citizenry doing what American citizens should do. And we shouldn't be too surprised about it if we see ourselves as citizens.
Well, I wasn't, well, I ain't gonna lie, I think it's more unexpected. It was more unexpected.
I agree with that.
I we'll see. I will say this, because it was a majority of them, I believe a lot of these local, because it has absolutely made no effect on federal level. The White House has responded in no way to any of our voices, but a lot of these local police departments, a lot of these local municipalities, governments, mayors, governors, whatever, have responded. and have put in, maybe started some things locally. That is a positive thing I've seen, and I believe it is because the majority of their voices were heard. And we know Karen and Bob get things done when they start complaining and when they start um, uh, telling our government how it is going to be, how it is going to be.
And that's how we utilize their allyship. Exactly. So we need them out there. We want them out there. We're citizens and they're supposed to be out there.
Yeah, I can agree with that, and that's why I just was like, well, maybe it wasn't gentrified, but it was definitely uncomfortable. Something that I would have not experienced before. But we'll see what the end results of that will be. So then we move into our rapid fire reports. We gave you more rapid fire articles this week because a lot was happening in the news, a lot was happening, and we didn't want to, we wanted to give you more information. And so we gave you a lot more rapid news reports. One of my first ones was the nonprofits led by people of color win less grant money with more strings. So not only do we get less grant money, the grant money we get, we got an answer for it. There's so many more strings attached, there's so many more rules attached to that money than our white counterparts, which is going to be important because, as we know, a lot of funding comes after these type of uprisings. A lot of funding comes after, well, first of all, we had the COVID pandemic, so there's funding for that. Then there's going to be funding for, the racial uprising. So who's going to get that money after all of this settles down? Well, majority of it is going to go to white organizations, white 504Cs, whatever, 504, I don't know, what are the A's, 504? Probably a lot more white faith-based institutions are going to get this money. And as we know, as ADOS, as in the myth of racial wealth gap that Tone and Sandy Darity helped co-write, we know charity is not going to fix the racial wealth gap. Nevertheless, we as ADOS are going to apply for these grants and we are going to get less money. It has always been that case. The people that award the grant money know that it is that way. They know that they are granting more white institutions this grant money. What blew my mind is that the programs that got the least money are the programs that were to help Black men. That was important. That was a part of the article. That the charity money, the grant money that's going towards organizations that are trying to help Black men get the least money. On the other side of that, Black women that apply for grants are getting less grant money than Black men, white women, and white men. So Black girl magic is not happening in the grant in the grant money field, ladies. And I know you guys are running to try to get that money and you are last on the list to receive it. Were you surprised by any information in the article, Daoud?
No, what they said in the article was that we've known this has been the case for some time. And back in the 80s, I witnessed this definitely. There's, of course, like in many other issues, white denial and explanations as to why these differences emerge. But all in all, this has been noticed since the 80s. I'm quite sure the generation before mine noticed it in the 60s and through the 70s.
Yeah. So I picked that because the money is getting ready a couple of episodes back, we asked the question. I think Hatim asked that question: where is this money coming from? Where is the money going? Well, where's this money that's going to come to fix COVID, to fix racial, inequalities in our communities? Where is that money going to? It's going to go to white 504Cs, white faith-based organizations, white women, white men, then black men, then black women. And the black men and black women are going to get the least of that grant money. So there's a racial gap in grant money. Like, seriously. So look, I just thought that was an important article to include. Also, I want to take the time to shout out to our viewers, Cynthia, Pamela, Antoine. Thank y'all for joining us tonight. If y'all have any questions, hit us up below. And then Daryl, you had a rapid article that dealt with the environmental racism, right?
Exactly. It's something that I've been talking about privately and online since February. When I started reviewing the reports in mid-January about the Wuhan, China, and Lombardy, Italy deaths, they were taking place typically as they usually do through seasonal flus and other time and that usual time frame. But what was definitely particular for coronavirus is that they had a high number of deaths in industrialized, high pollution areas. Mm-hmm. So why that stands out is because a lot more people were dying at younger ages, which is a surprise. But it's not a surprise given that these people dying at not the typical older ages was that because they spent their majority of their lives in pollution environments. That means their bodies were under a different level of toxic load, and therefore immune systems were not able to fight off the virus. Therefore, they died sooner or died at younger ages. So right. I said to myself, why in the media am I not hearing enough about what we could be doing to build up our immune systems? That was my first one. My second one was, but what is going to happen when the coronavirus comes here and Black people disproportionately will be living in those polluted areas because of generations of redlining and generations of zoning laws that permitted waste disposal plants and other types of pollution industries to be located in places where Black people live. I knew right then, definitely by early February, that Black people would suffer disproportionate deaths. I did later research that Black people have always been suffering disproportionate deaths since the CDD published from 1999 to 2017, except for 3 seasons, Black people had always been disproportionately dying of seasonal flus and viruses throughout that time frame. And so one of those co-factors was living in close proximity to polluting industries. So I knew that Black people would have disproportionate deaths, and I knew that that quarantining us would make it worse, not better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had to know it too.
Yeah, and I think environmental racism is going to pick up steam in the sense that I've been hearing it a lot more. I know you have been beating that drum beat, and then I've seen a couple articles about environmental racism. It doesn't get talked about a lot.
No, it doesn't.
So along with COVID, along with us already having underlying medical conditions because of environmental racism, because of slavery, because of Jim Crow and just the medical apartheid in this country, it just adds to all of that, combines to us being affected more, of course, to anything that America is experiencing, and we're experiencing it 10 times worse. So that was a good article about whether or not environmental racism is the cause of COVID. A couple other rapid news. I I reported on, and Yvette also kind of reported on this, and that is that Black, there's a saying that Black doesn't crack, but it cracks in a way that is not, you know, our melanin isn't affected, but mentally we are affected by a lot of things that we are just not discussing on a mainstream level. I think it's coming out a lot more, but it cracks. It cracks in a way that it adds. We may look young, but or our skin might, you know, be melanin makes us look younger than we actually are. But if we have chronic stress, we live in hostile conditions, we have serious medical conditions. So we are Black cracks in a whole lot of other different ways than whether or not our facial features don't wrinkle, or we don't we don't look older than what we are. Excuse me. So that was another article. Then Dawood, you did an article on Columbus, Ohio. It's number one in killing black people.
Yeah, where the Columbus Free Press was printed in 2016, but I thought it was really a priority to bring this out, given that Bob Petrakis, a writer, activist, and lawyer in this area, has been doing this work for quite some time, and I applaud him for that work he's done.
He mentioned that he ran for the Green Party. I recognize his name. He ran for an office here through the Green Party. That's who because I saw his name and I recognized it. Okay.
Yeah, this was a gentleman that was a part of my early activism. I worked for him soon after I got out of college.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's got a long track record and could also be a good ally. I believe. I don't know how much he might have changed, but this one he was trying to bring to the attention of Columbus area residents how Columbus was number one. I think he beat even the national press on acknowledging this at the time. I remember this at the time. And so, you know, all of this is data that is substantiated. Between 2013 and 2016, Columbus police were killing Black people disproportionately versus other groups. And he wanted to bring more attention to it, and he does so very well in this survey. I am purposely not seeing if this is being updated. I'm waiting for, at this late date, the national media they've got the resources. They should be finding if this is, in fact, still the case for the Columbus as a city and where it is at in the nation, because that is the place where we need, or the nation needs, to confront police horrible actions. I also have another theory along these lines, but I'm not going to share it at this time because I'm still doing research on it, and it'll be the featured article that I may write for our own production in the future, because I think it's very telling where this also converges, that I think people need to be aware about and need to know.
Right. Okay. All right. And last rapid report that I wanted to talk about is, and I don't know about in other places, but in Ohio, our public health department and our commissioners have declared racism a public health crisis. I don't know if this is just state thing, but in Ohio, racism is now a public health crisis. I don't have any idea what that means or what that's going to lead into. Are they going to, I have no idea what that means.
In Wisconsin, they were among the first to do that. And to be honest with you, you're right. I don't know what that means, other than on the state and local level, more resources would and should be engineered to compensate for those needs. Public health, as was mentioned in the article, everything that's impacted by our physiology, as you mentioned with Black Don't Crack. Our physiology is changed and altered due to the impact and stress of white domination racism. So things in the medical area needs to be arranged and should be brought to bear on those issues that impact the physiology to stop the internal decay that we're experiencing. That's one area. The biggest area, though, and this is where it really comes down to meaning anything, is if this will reflect in policy that puts us at some level of protection from such harm. Now, that's really the key right there. Other than that, it becomes a very good and long sought after and well deserved symbolic gesture that whites, I think, have spearheaded this overall, and these particular areas have long been, pressured to do so. I'm glad they're finally doing so now. But it has to result in something meaningful, and that is immediately, physiologically speaking, in the health arena, there needs to be funds available so that people can get automatic redress from the stressors of being Black in America due to white domination racism. And in the medium to long term, there needs to be actual policies to address that, if anything, that protect us as a group under siege by white domination racism.
Right. So they declared it racism a public health crisis. They have yet to create any policies to address those public health crisis of racism. How they plan to do that, I don't know. But like Yvette says, that is their job to figure out.
Exactly.
And so we'll see what they figure out. Hopefully they'll have the public or the residents of Franklin, well, I know Franklin County is one of them, but the residents of Ohio weigh in on what we would like to see happen in that process. Of course, we want to stop the medical apartheid, that's in our community. We want to stop our babies from dying, our mothers from dying during childbirth, those immediate things that they can fix right now.
Exactly.
And they can put in those policies in it. First of all, the hospitals, I don't understand why the hospitals just themselves, they give us these numbers of Black women dying and babies dying and mortality rate in babies and that's all they give us is numbers, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully by them declaring racism as a public health crisis, we can get stronger, healthier living individuals and families in our community. Hopefully that's what it translates into. I'm glad that they recognize it is symbolic, but tangibles, resources, hospitals, Black doctors, Black ADOS doctors in our communities. Investing in those types of programming is needed. They started it and didn't, and then of course, too many success stories, and then there's white rage. I don't want to get into Carol Anderson's, but I 100% believe in what her theory on what white rage is. So check her out. And then we get to our main event. Our main event this week was from a CNN article titled, "I'm a Black man in a COVID-19 hotspot. I don't have sympathy for people of color who won't social distance." First of all, I don't know why the title says people of color, because he was only talking about Black people in his article. It was written by John Blake, and Daoud asked the questions and I gave the answers. I think that's how it goes. Again, this is one of those articles I chose that I felt we needed to push back on it, because he immediately blamed young Black people in his community with not social distancing. And so Daoud, you want to take over? You handled this you interviewed this article really well.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. This guy made me dive even deeper. I had to go to his other work to see if there wasn't a pattern. There was a pattern, and there was a pattern. This guy has a history of etching out a space for him so he can advocate at some issues for Black people, other times for people of color, and then at other times, obviously against Black people, where he gets to act as a stern grandfather telling Black people to act right, while
Hmm.
at the same time claiming he's not into respectability politics. These are evidences of a gentleman in this case that has found a niche for him to etch out a way of avoiding the slings and arrow of white racism, maintain employment while appealing to their sensibilities and shortchanging ours. And he's done it rather effectively. And that's why I love forming the questions I did, especially when I connected his past work to his work in this one. And I like lightning bolts, I stung him on two separate approaches, evidence of what he did in this article and evidence what he did in another article, which basically blamed Black people for racism. In a
Hmm.
nutshell, he said Black people can be racist too. Well, he had no problem using the term Black people there. But overall, in this article, when he's talking about people that are in jeopardy because of the coronavirus, he says nice, gentle words like people of color. But when talking about Black people not following the guidelines, he doesn't say people of color there. He goes into Black people, and particularly Black people in his neighborhood. So this man has an issue internally, or he's just etched out a means and way of appealing to white sensibilities that he can keep his JOB while at the same time seeming like he can be there for Black people because he's Black, and sometimes he'll write things that'll be supportive of Black people. But on the whole, in this case in particular, he was appealing to white sensibilities in that they shouldn't care too much when Black people complain about their rights being violated as a result of non-compliance with coronavirus, because they should know. He's wagging his finger because they should know better, because they must be the ones behind all the Black associated deaths with related to coronavirus. And
Hmm.
that is, I had a great problem with that, and that was a second area that I found exception to this article.
Yeah, and in noticing, in researching his like you said, his body of work, there is a pattern there, and he is presenting himself as a gatekeeper, or as
Hmm.
you called it, a Negro whisperer, where he's gonna get us in check, right? He's gonna
Yeah,
get the black. He's gonna let the Black people know, what we're doing wrong, because, um, as he put it, in the Black barber shops and in the beauty shops, there's this underlying tone that we don't basically air out our business in the streets, but he's going to air out our business. He's going to get us straight, right? And
exactly.
he's going to blame us for doing some of the simplest same things that all Americans are doing.
Exactly,
You
exactly.
know,
And the particular thing about him also on that line is, while putting Black people in their place, he's also telling white people it's okay. Don't feel sorry for them because they should be acting better anyway.
right, right. So it's really him policing Black people as well.
Hmm.
Um, and so I felt a real need to push back on this article, and you did a great job of
Thank you.
diving into it and pulling out those questions, because he said it himself. He would have no problem with the police coming and giving out citations, but as we know, almost all encounters with police and Black people, it escalates. So he's okay with police coming, calling, not police coming, but him calling the police um, on his young neighbors who are doing probably the same thing that his neighbors to the right are doing, who are white. So uh,
He effectively has become the Karen calling the police on a Black man, but he's a male doing it in blackface.
right, right, right. So I named this um, uh, episode "Black People, I Blame You," because that's exactly what he's doing. He's blaming Black people. So um, I think you have to and you touched on it in the episode, I think you have to watch it. It helps to know who your enemies are, who's against you, who's for you. Tony and Yvette helped us decipher that. And so we'll see, you know, if I predicted that he's going to make more articles.
Oh yeah.
And even articles that, let's see, articles that he thinks that he can still chastise us, scold us.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. We'll see. I think this is working.
I'm just getting an image of articles of ADOS.
Yep, that's me. That's me. I'm testing.
Okay.
I'm testing. But yeah, let me go back here. I'm just testing now, seeing how things work around here. We're pretty much done. You got anything else that you would like to add?
Something I did forget, and I even told you I wanted to say it when we were dealing with the personality piece, and that was when we talked about it in the original broadcast. You had mentioned how aggressive white activists were, and you wondered if whether or not we should be that aggressive. And I took the Martin Luther King route because it is valid. But I also wanted to say this, but I thought I'd save it for now, that we should also be aggressive in terms of definitely protecting ourselves, since what's been clearly documented now is overt and aggressive police behavior. They have been trying to undermine us through the media by it being too violent, but we've caught people, especially in Minneapolis, where it might have been a police officer who actually initiated destruction at the police precinct. So that's one. And then you have the possible Antifa connection for aggression. Again, needlessly causing destruction is definitely not necessary. But what I'm calling for is exactly what Martin Luther King had, which we now know since about 10 years ago. The Deacons of Defense protected him. So there's the issue of violence and being nonviolent, and then there is the issue of protection. And in that sense, where you were talking about should we be more aggressive, I believe we should definitely get more aggressive with protection, protecting the men and women who are willing to be out there to stand up for their rights as American citizens, to protect ourselves from police abuse. We've got to do something because there, and you know, this has been up, you know, is illustrated in the movie Gangs of New York. They would just set a date and just meet up and fight police, fight the opposing gang, and get it settled that way. Sadly, I'm not advocating for that, of course. What I am advocating for is what Malcolm X said: we have a right to defend ourselves. So we've already got a segment of brothers and sisters out there that are going for legal gun carrying and training, so they can best protect themselves. Hopefully it doesn't have to get that far. But what we should also get into is defense training and protection training to combat police abuse and white vigilante abuse. That is something we need to gear ourselves up for, because this is not going to go anywhere soon.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and so that's the end of the show. Vicky, I don't know why you can't share the can't do a watch party. Let me see. I don't know. I'll take a look at the settings. I haven't changed anything. I'm not sure why you can't share it. I mean, it's in the group. So that might be an issue. Maybe when I had it on I don't know. Maybe because it's not on our page, but it's on our inside the group, and inside the group is where you can't share. So I think that's an issue. I may start taking this live to our page instead of the group, but we'll see. And maybe you'll be able to share it then. But thank you for joining us. I do want to encourage everybody to Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Store, Google Play Store, SoundCloud. You can subscribe on it's a lot of places that you can subscribe to us on. Oh, go to our webpage, articlesofados.com. You can subscribe to the RS feed there. And any place that you listen to podcasts, our show should be listed. If not, let us know so we can get it listed wherever you're listening to podcasts at. Also, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/articles of ADOS. For the low, low price of $3 a month, you can support the show. It helps to get us going here, get us supporting my co-host and the things that he needs to do, because he has some great plans and I want to support him on his plans. So please go to patreon.com/articlesofados.com and support the podcast that way. You can also, if you would like to advertise with us, please send us an email. If you have an event that you would like to share and add to the podcast, email us at listeners@articlesofados.com. What is that? Is there anything else before we go, Daoud?
We've covered it all.
Okay. I'll check on that, Vicky, and make sure that you can share. We might have to just go live straight from our page instead of inside the group, because our group is private. I think that's why it won't let you do a watch party. And a couple of times in the past, I have went live from the page. It's probably better to do it from the page. Me and Daoud will talk about it and see what's the best way to move forward with that. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, hit them below. Best question gets a promo pack. If you already got a promo pack, that was your promo pack. You're just asking questions at this point that we appreciate. If you have an article that you want us to feature, please send it to us or tag us. Say, hey, feature this on your podcast. It's a lot we could do, and we're just getting started. We got a surprise for episode 10 for you guys, so stay tuned for episode 10. All right, so that's it. Good night, everybody. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we are no longer live, right?